Hey, well, welcome everyone to Nature Calls. Thank you for joining us. This is the Nature Conservancy in Alabama. We are a group of 20 conservationists plus a few other staff working together to conserve the lands and waters for nature and people. I'm Jessica Mitchell. I'm the Philanthropy Program Associate with TNC Alabama. And Nature Calls is our virtual field trip where we share a new conservation project in Alabama each month on the second Thursday at 3 p.m. Before we get started with today's program, I'm going to share a few housekeeping bits. First, I want to let you know that we are recording this presentation. And second, we are muting your microphone and ask that if you wish to comment that you type your question into the chat at the bottom of your screen. This makes it easier for our presenter to manage the questions and answers at the end of the presentation. This program will be approximately 15 minutes long, with another 15 minutes for questions and answers at the end. Again, use your chat function at the bottom. And now I am pleased to introduce Thomas Reddick, our Director of Forest Management. And he's going to be taking us on a tour of the Working Woodlands project. Take it away, Thomas.
Thank you, Jessica. And as I navigate to start sharing my screen, I want to take this time to thank those of you who have been involved with bringing this program to Alabama. And I'm happy to be implementing it here and look forward to sharing this presentation with you. So, I guess for starters, can everyone see the slide? Okay. Well, thanks again. As Jessica said, my name is Thomas Reddick. I'm the Director of Forest Management here at the Alabama chapter of the Nature Conservancy. I would like today to use this time to either introduce to you or further educate you on the Working Woodlands program. First of all, as this is the first time I'm meeting many of you, other than some small chats earlier, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Forestry from Auburn University, as well as a Master's in Forest Business from the University of Georgia. So whether it's a prayer in Jordan Hare or a tack between the hedges, I think I've got my bases covered around the SEC. For about half a decade, I lived in Mobile, Alabama, where I worked as a procurement forester and a land manager in southwestern Alabama. Here I was active in the community as well as participating in the Alabama Forestry Association across the state. On a little more personal note, I like to think that I fit in well at the Conservancy due to my passion for the outdoors. When I can combine my joy for traveling and fly fishing, it makes for an ideal day away from the office. So getting back to the topic at hand, we'll focus on the Working Woodlands program. Working Woodlands is a program in which we engage with private landowners to implement sustainable forest management in exchange for access to voluntary carbon markets. The image in this slide is from Chestnut Mountain Reserve in Tennessee. Tennessee and this reserve are important in implementing Working Woodlands in Alabama because of their past experience, references, and models that they are allowed to share with us here in Alabama. In order to increase the reserve's carbon storage here at Chestnut Mountain, the Nature Conservancy has implemented the track into our Working Woodlands program. The revenues from the program go towards restoring more of the property's forest cover. For example, the Nature Conservancy is carefully reintroducing fire into the landscape and treating trees for pests like the hemlock woolly adelgid to foster even healthier forests. As a part of its donation, Bridgestone Americas Incorporation set aside credits to offset emissions from its new headquarters in Nashville. This project has been a wonderful template for future projects in Alabama. With Working Woodlands, we're aiming to partner with private landowners to improve their forest management while keeping forest. Now, if you'll focus on the different shades of purple here in this map provided by the U.S. Forest Service, notice that these colorations, the purple designates private land ownership in the country, where in contrast, the green is public land ownership. Notice that the majority of the private land ownership is within the eastern and southeastern United States. This makes this region of the country such a viable project location for our Working Woodlands program. Now, locally in Alabama, over 69% of the state is covered in forest. Now, of these 23 million acres of forested land, over 93% is privately owned. If you were to dig a little deeper, one could assume that nearly 93% of Alabama's forests are not protected with long-term conservation agendas due to lack of public ownership. And that's something we want to engage with the private landowners to help promote and further disvalue development or breaking down of large tracts of land and forest. Working Woodlands is a forest conservation program that uses certified forest management and the growing voluntary carbon market to fund conservation and improve management of private forest. I like to visualize Working Woodlands as a three-legged stool. It takes all three components for the program to stand. While we have many goals in the Working Woodlands program, the sale of carbon credits is the financial driver. However, the ability for the landowner to gain access to the competitive carbon markets requires the other two legs of the stool. Working Woodlands conservation easements require a minimum of a 40-year agreement where the landowner will forgo some rights while retaining many others. Land development with the ability to divide property, as well as mining rights, are examples of what conservation easement reserves are reserved from the landowner. Continuous access and recreation, such as hunting and fishing, hiking, and bird watching, are all still permitted, along with the ability to lease rights for access. The third leg of the stool is forest certification, which forest certification guarantees a sustainable management for the life of the easement. This assures that the trees that are sequestering carbon will be there as advertised. So to dig a little deeper in our three legs of our Working Woodlands stool, Forest Stewardship Council is our preferred certification vessel, as it is the gold standard within our industry. The forest certification holds us accountable in reference to our forest management plans and for what we are selling to the carbon markets. These standards allow us to market our landowners' credits at premium rates. The American Carbon Registry audits and verifies all of our carbon credits and is accepted by regulatory and voluntary carbon markets. The forest management plan created by the Nature Conservancy will allow each project to be adapted to landowner specific objectives while maintaining sustainable, healthy forest. Examples of management objectives are healthy timber production, wildfire habitats, prescribed fire, threatened and endangered species management, or a combination of any of the above. We believe that Working Woodlands benefits everyone, including all parties involved as well as the surrounding community. Before we get into the benefits, I would like to point out the picture displayed. As Jessica alluded, or Ms. Olivia I got to visit Tennessee last week, where they have been a few years into the Working Woodlands program. And this was me with the staff, or I was taking the picture with the Conservancy staff outside of Mountain City, Tennessee, pitching the Working Woodlands program to a landowner while maintaining our social distancing, as you might notice. This trip was great. There was no shortage of cooler weather, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I got some on-the-ground experience for pitching and data collection and interaction with the Working Woodlands program. So I'm very thankful for Tennessee and being a shoulder to lean on for implementing this program and just a source of wealth of information. I'm hoping to get to go back later this month for the data collection process to decide whether this project is viable financially. So back to the many benefits provided. We'll start with the landowner benefits. They include no upfront expenses to the landowner, includes a forest volume and carbon inventory, which this is a timber cruise that will provide timber volume data for future stand management, marketing wood products, and identifying the amount of carbon sequestration on the tract. It will also inform us whether the project is economically feasible to pursue. The landowner also gains a professional forest management plan, which is derived from the forest inventory. They retain all revenues from timber harvest, as well as a majority portion of carbon revenues. They gain access to the Nature Conservancy expertise, resources, and experience, as well as gain a possible charitable deduction, depending on the easement they choose. Benefits for the Nature Conservancy include long-term protection of high-quality, priority private timberlands, additional property under a certified forest management certificate, as well as a portion of carbon revenues to allow for cost neutrality and additional conservation opportunities. We are currently targeting large contiguous tracts with forest types consisting of bottomland hardwood or upland hardwood pine mix, as well as any ecologically unique or sensitive sites. Examples of unique sites that we manage around the state are karst and cave formations, lowland bogs, and water sources for public consumption. We love it when a project provides a narrative for the landowner as well as the community. While this vast acreage requirement generally narrows the potential candidates, as you can notice, private landowners with greater than around 2,000 or more acres are suitable for this project. But with such a large threshold to get over, we are working on similar programs that will allow smaller landowners to enroll in the future. An example would be a co-op program where landowners within a targeted ecosystem could enroll independently into a greater project. Here, their resources will be pooled to generate access to similar benefits provided in our Working Woodlands program. After the extensive certification process facilitated by the Conservancy, these properties then become a part of a network of voluntary carbon offset projects that collectively have an impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I'd be happy to address any questions now. If you would please just type them into the chat box at the bottom of your screen, which Jessica will then moderate. If I can find my mouse, I will stop sharing. There we
go. We do have a question. The first one is, are there any co-ops already in existence?
The co-op program is in the Northeast. I think you're referring to one of my later slides where the smaller landowners are getting involved. There's a trial run in maybe Connecticut, Pennsylvania, which is where Working Woodlands started. And they are designating, say, something like the Cahaba River watershed or some equivalent in their area. And so they're targeting one ecosystem and the smaller landowners within that. They try to build up about the 2,000 plus acre size greater area, and then we'll pitch the carbon sequestrated throughout those group of landowners to the carbon market. But right now that is in a trial. They're trying to find the financial feasibility of it, as well as the involvement of the independent landowners in a greater co-op. So we hope to see results of that soon.
Awesome. Another question is, where is the Alabama Working Woodlands located?
Well, potentially all across the state. The Nature Conservancy owns property in Jackson County, in the northeast corner of the state, which is the Sharp Bingham Mountain Preserve. And prior to me coming on board, the state chapter began enrollment of that property, which is about 4,000 acres. And now I've been able to take it under my wing and carry it through. We just had the data inventory taking place last month by a team. We're going through the modeling process, so we're figuring out how much carbon is actually being stored and will be stored into the future. Developing a forest management plan, and then hopefully we're scheduled this December to be audited and then verify all of our credits on site, and then we can take that to the market first of the year. So we're doing a trial run on our own property to, I wouldn't say work out kinks, but just familiarize ourselves or see if there are any more efficient ways to go about the process, and which we are picking some of those out as we go. But otherwise we're taking inquiries and spreading the word across the state for other potential projects.
Sure. Do you have any landowners identified or interested right now?
We have people reaching out currently, and we are reaching out to those who have been involved with the Conservancy or any past business. Like I said, because the template that came out of Pennsylvania, we're really targeting hardwood tracks because of their longevity and their longer rotations. So we're leaning on that at the time being, which has us focusing on the bottomland hardwoods such as the Alabama River, Coosa River watersheds, as well as the northeastern part of the state and the lower Appalachians, lower Cumberland Plateau, and Blue Ridge areas. And in the future, would like to see where we can implement more pine management, but right now those are our target areas, and we're looking at landowners and specifically large landowners in those regions.
Okay. And why would a landowner enroll, and how much money do you think they could possibly make out of it?
Well, it's very situational. Just like if somebody asks how much is my timber worth from a harvest perspective, but so this if you want to be conservation minded and want to guarantee that this property might be there for whether it's your community, your children, family members, you're guaranteed to keep the forest a forest over that time span, whether it's 40 years, 100 years, or in perpetuity. You're incentivized with carbon markets, which we see growing constantly with the involvement and interest of larger corporations across America. So you have the financial stream that makes it more inviting, especially as timber prices are declining currently. But it also allows you to manage your forest, not so passive, more active management, where you can get revenue still from timber harvest, or put your berms in, or implement food plots for your wildlife viewing and whatnot. So we like this. We call it Working Woodlands because you're still heavily involved with the property.
Okay. And just to try and educate us, about how much carbon can a tree absorb?
One tree could absorb, per year, may consume, we call it a metric ton equivalent of what might be produced in the atmosphere. So technically you're putting a weight to a carbon emission. And so there's been some people who are better with conversions, but per year, you're a mature tree, I'm saying, maybe 15 inches diameter, 80 feet tall, a ton to two, maybe three, depending on its growing season and what type of soil type it's in. And it's very relative, but we like to look for tracts that have mature stands, and we're averaging anywhere from 40 to 60 metric carbon equivalent tons per acre. And we're seeing anywhere from 10 to $13 per ton paying out in the carbon markets, and have seen as high as $15 per ton, which was recently announced by Microsoft with some offsets they were trying to procure. They were looking at $15 a ton, which is I would say through the roof as of recently, but that ceiling just keeps climbing, which is great.
It's great. So you actually went ahead and answered the next question, which was the typical price of a carbon credit.
Sure. What I can elaborate is because of some of our higher standards, there are some, I wouldn't say bottom tier, but baseline entry carbon credits that companies can buy. Say, we're trying to the point where if somebody wanted to go on a flight and offset their flight, or smaller scale, you might could buy in for $5 to $8, but because of our certification standards and our conservation easements, we are held to a higher standard, which can also bring a premium. And especially when we can build in the narrative, whereas you're protecting a watershed, or there's something with a community nearby where you're a cave habitat is unique to the state. A lot of times those, if you can sell that to a regional company looking to offset, they might be willing to pay a premium. So it's very situational, but we try to market it to its fullest potential.
Excellent. And where are the carbon markets to which the credits are being sold?
So there is a regulated market in California, which it requires a 100-year easement. But there's a voluntary market that is well established across the country. It's managed by some of these accredited firms, such as the American Carbon Registry, and anyone can buy into it. As I mentioned, there are platforms where you could take a road trip with your family across the country and say, hey, I'd like to offset those emissions, assuming you don't have an electric vehicle. And you can buy into it, but there are like several corporations. We're trying to target people here in the States, so where they're buying, they're the better good for their community, where they're also buying back into the carbon here within the state. But as far as the market, it's nationwide.
Yeah. And I think this might end up being our last question, but how do you determine how much carbon is being stored in a particular plot or acreage?
So that is part of the inventory I alluded to, and with if everything goes as scheduled, I will get to go participate in one later in the month in Tennessee. So you take a typical forest inventory, just like you would if you're familiar with the timber cruise, where you have a stratified random sample across the land, where you're getting all aspects of the topography. You take a plot and you'll measure every tree within the radius of that plot. For the carbon, it's a little more detailed, because anything from 5 centimeter stem that could feature, to grow into something greater. And you're also including tops and limbs and things that you wouldn't typically include in a timber marketing or fiber production. So you take the crews, you get the volumes, and then there are workups that we use based on the growth rates and the climate in the region, and you get a total volume. And there's a exponential factor to learn how many metric carbon equivalents are within these trees on the property.
Very cool. Well, Thomas, that was great. If our audience has any additional questions about this particular project or any of our work with TNC Alabama, you can email us at philanthropy.alabama@tnc.org. And finally, no matter what is happening in the world, our work continues uninterrupted. Conservation never stops. We need your support to keep our conservationists out in the field doing their important work for people and for nature. So please donate to the Nature Conservancy in Alabama. It's easy. You can send us a brief email at philanthropy.alabama@tnc.org, and we will reply with a link for online donations or a guide to you on sending your donation via mail. Thank you in advance for making a tax-deductible financial contribution. And you can invite someone to join you for the next Nature Calls. That will be on October 8th at 3 p.m. Just forward the invitation that you receive in your email, or you can share their contact information with us and we can invite them on your behalf. And on behalf of everyone at the Nature Conservancy in Alabama, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.